Welcome to my first character spotlight for Higan Eruthyll video, gamers. Just a bit of disclaimer before we start, I don't know everything that there is to know about the game yet, as the game is still in the early stage and haven't unlocked all of the character potentials yet. So I'm going mostly to talk about my experience with the characters and my thoughts regarding their potential. For the first episode, I'm going to discuss about my first SSR character that I obtained and the most vital member of my current party composition, Caesar. Before we continue, do leave a like and subscribe to my channel to show your support towards the idea of me making character spotlight for Higan Eruthyll. Also voice your comments regarding Caesar, since this game is still very new and it has quite a complex gameplay if you take many mechanics into consideration. And plus, I believe people have different experiences with the character. And now let's get into Caesar's character overview. Let's start with the basic. Her role is a Lumino Guardian, hence she's a very good tanker, since she will be a neutral against 4 elements, but might fall faster against Umbra DPS. Moving on to her stats, she boasts a very high HP, armor and magic armor, while the latter is higher, with the drawback of very low physical attack or AD. And now let's take a look at her basic skill. Her basic auto attack blast will deal damage from 110% of her AD at level 1 to 200% at level 10. Due to her low AD stats, her auto attacks will not do much damage, so it's not recommended to level up early. Her passive, Favor of God, every time Caesar receives a healing, she will obtain 1 stack of devotion, at which each stack will increase her magic resistance from 7% at level 1 up to 13.3% at level 10. Also, do note that 1 stack of devotion will last for 5 seconds and you can obtain up to 5 stacks at a time. Moving on to her active skill, the first skill, Lunar Cloud, will deal physical damage on an arc based on her AD from 200% plus flat 45 at level 1 to 380% plus flat at 1028. Every target hits by this skill will heal Caesar by 75% of her magic resistance, with maximum triggering on 4 targets in 1 usage. This skill will help Caesar deals a bit more damage as a guardian, and she will be more self-sufficient on healing, and your dedicated healer can prioritize healing your other party members instead. Her alternate active skill, Gleaming Snow, will heal Caesar and allies in a circular area around her by 271% plus flat 51 points of her magic resistance at level 1 up to 518.5% plus 1300 flat points of her magic resistance. This skill is very useful if you're not planning to bring a dedicated healer and decided to bring more DPS and burst, especially melee units. It will be trickier if you have range unit, but it can be done with the right positioning and knowing the right opportunity to use your healing skill to heal your range units. But the drawback of relying on this skill as your only source of healing will not allow you to stack many devotion stacks from her passive easily, especially if you want to get a maximum stack to get more out of both of her Lunar Cloud and Gleaming Snow. Lastly, her ult, Descent of Goddess, heal herself and allies in the field by 400.4% plus flat 74 points at level 1 up to 760.4% plus flat 1840 points of her magic resistance, while also removing 3 stacks of debuff. I've never had a character having more than 3 debuffs at one point, so if there's more than 3, I'm not sure which one that will be removed, whether it's the first one that is being applied or the latter ones that is being applied to a character that will be removed from this ultimate skill. After that, Caesar will enter the sacred state for 10 seconds, at which her auto attack interval will be reduced, and her last auto attacks in this state will deal additional damage to enemy in front of her and heal herself by 200% of her magic resistance. To give a little bit of a clarification, the interval in this case is that she will perform 4-hit combo instead of 2-hit combo for her 1 cycle of her auto attack. The only problem with this ult is that it is a bit hard to trigger since Caesar is a bit slow in recharging her ultimate energy unless you get a play that is dedicated for that to help her recharge her ultimate energy. If it's up to me, the order of skills that I want to be leveled in my opinion should be first her active skill, then her ultimate, then her passive, and lastly her auto attack, since her overall auto attack damage is really low. And you should spend those precious materials in the early game for your dedicated DPS, such as a caster or an assassin. Now let's talk about recommended plays to be equipped on Caesar. I believe people will provide different opinions, But after inspecting all of the available plays in the current version, I will recommend 2 plays for each rarity that I think that suits her playstyle, and those are the following. For 5 stars plays, I would recommend the first one is to be Su Xuan for more 15% magic resistance stats, which also affects her skills and ult, and also the play's 3-set bonus passive, increase healing received by 10%, while also increase her attack speed, and also each 3 auto attacks will generate 3 more ultimate energy for her, which then allows us to have more healing on reserve with her ult if needed. And this also addressed the problem that I mentioned with her ult previously. And the most important thing from this play, it will make her even more tankier. As for her 4-star options, I would recommend either Zhu Yingtai to get 10% more armor, and when Caesar activates her skill, it will grant her allies low damage mitigation, which is probably around 5% damage mitigation, which is overall good for your team's durability. And the second option would be Ching Ching, which will increase her healing received by 10%, and also being hit recovers 2% of her HP per second for 5 seconds. And this can be triggered 1 time for every 15 seconds. And this plays overall is good because it will trigger her passive every time she receives heals every seconds for the 5-second durations. And that should help her to reach her maximum stacks. As for her 3-star options, I personally would recommend number 1, Santine for increased armor by 32 points, and also again physical shield equals to 50% of max HP for 12 seconds, so that Caesar can tank more, especially at the beginning of the fight. The second option, I would probably give her Tin Man that increases her AD by 32, and also 10 seconds after the battle start, it will reduce the upcoming physical damage by 50% for about 10 seconds. It's not the greatest, but it should do a decent job for it until you get a better place. As for her stats for play adaptation, I would suggest you either go for more defensive stats like HP, armor, or magic resistance especially, that will boost her overall synergy with her passive and also her active skill and her ult. Or you can go for more ultimate energy recharge since we want her ult to be live as often as possible. And if not, even energy refund is not bad for her as well, as it will benefit the whole team as a whole with more energy available. Now, let's discuss how much her awakening will benefit her playstyle. I won't get into details of the smaller awakening since usually all characters from each class share the same buffs, so I'm going to discuss their phase passive talents instead. And for those who don't know, each character can go up to 6 level of phases. Starting with phase 3, Caesar has an option to either select when her HP goes below 50%, her damage mitigation will increase by 20%, which I think is very solid for all kinds of situations. While on the other hand, the second option, when she enters the battle, her magic resistance is increased by 60% for 10 seconds, which personally I think not that great and very situational. If there's ever going to be an enemy that is going to deal a lot of magic damage burst at the beginning, and you need to tank it through, and this talent might be worth it. So personally, I would always use her first talent on phase 3. At phase 4, Caesar has the option to either select the Lunar Cloud effective range is increased permanently, and this skill now depletes 20% of enemy ult energy. This skill will for sure make her first skill to be more useful, especially in PvP or bosses, so that they don't end up using their skills and burst you down very fast, especially those players that focus on giving their units as much energy recharge as possible. While the other options, her Gleaming Snow restore allies HP within range by a boost of 150% on top of the skill scaling, and also it will remove some crowd control debuff on them. This is just a straightforward buff to healing skill for more heals, and now she can perhaps cleanse some status debuff like stuns from your teammates. But since she is in the front line, she's the one usually will get affected by it, so further test is needed to see how good the cleansing effect is. At phase 5, Caesar has the option to select her passive Favor of God can stack up 2 stacks. I haven't reached this far yet into her talent level, but her passive already able to stack up to 5 without this talent. This means either she can get 2 more additional stacks, so now up to 7 stacks, or in 1 healing she will get 2 stacks immediately. The wording for this talent is very ambiguous and I think the developers need to fix it. I will verify this information as soon as I reach her at phase 5 and post that information in the comment sections and the description of the video. If any of you viewers have Caesar that has reached that level, do share it with us and how this first talent works, so we can clear up the ambiguity of it. The second option is very straightforward, which increases her Favor of God duration for extra 3 seconds. So now it can be live for 8 seconds instead of 5, which is very good to keep her magic resistance at its maximum boost for longer. And finally, at phase 6, Caesar has the option to either select the Descent of Goddess duration lasts for 5 seconds longer, meaning she will perform more auto attacks and deals a little bit more of extra damage. Since her AD is not that high, I don't think this is a significant buff. Other option is when the Descent of Goddess ends, she will recover 20% of her ult energy, which honestly I would prefer the second option more, since that way we can have ult to be ready more often and she can always perform more emergency healing if needed. Moving to some of the tips that I can give you a bit about Caesar. Recommended teammates to play with her. Well, almost everyone can play with her, honestly. But my favorite will be to bring more melee units so that she can heal them easier if you're bringing her as your dedicated healer. So you don't need an audio tricks class as a dedicated healer and put more DPS units instead. Let me give you my personal team. I will bring Basil to put ranged enemy towards Caesar so the other melee units can finish the enemy back row faster. If you use her first skill, that will allow her to get more benefits for more heals as it will hit more enemies at once. But if you're not putting Caesar as your dedicated healer, you can bring other healers, especially someone like Nono or Screamer or even Rocco, that can provide buff or debuff and heal Caesar to proc even more of her passive to get a more consistent stacks of increase in magic resistance. The other spot I usually dedicate it to an assassin character to provide as much burst damage as possible. But if they need some healing, they can come closer to Caesar by using their skills to an enemy Caesar is currently targeting. But if Caesar is your dedicated healer, you may bring your ranged unit, but healing them will be very tricky as it requires you to have a right positioning and always watch their health and Caesar ult availability. Let me talk about her PvP or auto battle capability really quickly. If you're using her as your dedicated healer, she doesn't do a good job in PvP or auto mode, as the AI doesn't use her skills or ult at the right moment when the teammates really needs them. There are many instances for me when Caesar ult was available for over 5 seconds, and yet the AI always uses it when my teammates are already dead. In PvP, I would recommend to bring Gildan, Sheru, or Kiara instead, since they can tank and provide buff or debuff, and bring a dedicated healer to heal the Guardian. Well, to sum it up, if I have to put her into a tier at the current state of the game, with S tier being at the highest, S tier is reserved for a character that can be used in almost all situations and can fit almost all of team composition. I would say due to her nature of being very versatile tank and that can work as a healer as well, it's a great plus for Caesar. But the minus is that as dedicated healer, you need to be more observant with your teammates' health and positioning, and therefore it requires a higher skill. Also, her auto mode is not a reliable healer due to the AI not using her skills and ult when it is really needed. Due to all these reasons, overall I will put Caesar in A tier. Well, that is all of the information that I wanted to convey regarding Caesar at the moment. As I have mentioned in the introduction of the video, the game is still very new, and as long as the game is getting a good support from the players, more interesting concepts and character synergies could be discovered in the future if the developers can keep producing interesting content and interesting characters, and the most importantly, to keep developing the really fun combat. At this point, I'm pretty sure I'm still missing a lot of information that can be conveyed regarding Caesar. If I do have something that I figure out later, I will pin it in the comment section of this video. Lastly, if you want to see more of the character spotlight video for Higan Eruthyll, do subscribe to my channel and press the bell and like button to get notified on the next character spotlight. My channel is still very small at the moment. Your support will give me more motivations, and eventually I can release videos like this character spotlight more often. But anyways, thanks for watching and listening. Any specific characters that you want me to cover for the next video, do leave it in the comment section. Until the next video, stay sharp gamers.
legend will never die.